All right. Good morning and welcome. Today we are starting Daniel chapter 10. Well, we'll start it and we'll finish it. And we are turning a corner, kind of moving towards the end of the book. And one of the things that I think it's important to kind of consider as we move through the final three chapters, because Daniel, our canonical Daniel, has 12 chapters, is that while the previous chapters, the previous nine chapters, really are kind of like they're individual stories for each chapter. I mean, there's a sense to which you can kind of read them out of order, and that's fine, and they're not even collected and put into chronological order. Daniel chapters 10 through 12 is different. It's the only exception to the rule because really it's one self-sustained section. And so we're just going to be reading chapter 10 today, but really it's the introduction to what's going to take place in chapter 11 and chapter 12. So, well, again, just kind of wild chapters 1 through 9 are just they're individual stories. You can kind of read them individually as individual chapters. You can't do that with chapter 10 because chapter 10 is meant to be the first, the sort of introduction to 10 through 12. So 10 through 12 is its own section, and that's very, very important for understanding the contents of it. Luckily, the stuff that's in the chapter today it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing in here that involves differences of translations. And there's actually a really, really interesting piece of data today that I think, if you haven't already kind of been made aware of it, it might really revolutionize the way that you kind of understand the world and understand conflict and understand the relationship between good and evil. So I think Daniel chapter 10 is underappreciated because of that. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. So let me share my screen and we can begin with our reading and study of Daniel chapter 10. All right. Okay. All right. So the title I wanted to give to this chapter is Angelic Warfare, which again is probably not something that you typically think about when you think of Daniel chapter 10. But I do think that's one of the interesting contributions that this chapter brings to biblical theology. And I think there's a lot of really interesting facts that are involved in it. Okay, so let's read the chapter and then we can go back and we can talk about some of the finer details. Again, this is one of the shorter chapters, but I think you'll be surprised at how much is actually packed into this short chapter. Okay, so let's begin here, just starting in verse 1, reading out the NASB. And grab my glasses. Okay, so in the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, who is named Belteshazzar, and the message was true and one of great conflict. But he understood the message and had an understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, had been mourning for 3 entire weeks. I did not eat any tasty food, nor did meat or wine enter my mouth, nor did I use any ointment at all until the entire 3 weeks were completed. On the 24th day of the first month, while I was at the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a certain man dressed in linen, whose waist was girded with a belt of pure gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl. His face had the appearance of lightning. His eyes were like flaming torches. His arms and feet like the gleam of polished bronze. And the sound of his words like the sound of a tumult. Now I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, while the men who were with me did not see the vision. Nevertheless, a great dread fell on them, and they ran away to hide themselves. So I was left alone, and I saw this great vision, yet no strength was left in me. For my natural color turned to a deathly pallor, and I retained no strength. But I heard the sound of his words, and as soon as I heard the sound of his words, I fell into a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground. Then behold, a hand touched me, and set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said to me, O Daniel, man of high esteem, understand the words that I am about to tell you and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. Then he said to me, Do not be afraid, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart on understanding this and on humbling yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia was withstanding me for 21 days. Then, behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been there with the kings of Persia. Now I have come to give you an understanding of what will happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision pertains to the days yet future. When he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face towards the ground and became speechless. And behold, one who resembled a human being was touching my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke and said to him who was standing before me, O my Lord, as a result of the vision, anguish has come upon me, and I have retained no strength. For how can such a servant of my Lord talk to such as my Lord? As for me, there remains just now no strength in me, nor has any breath been left in me. Then this one with the human appearance touched me again and strengthened me. He said, O man of high esteem, do not be afraid. Peace be with you. Take courage and be courageous. Now, as soon as he spoke to me, I received strength and said, May my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. Then he said, Do you understand why I came to you? But I shall now return to fight against the prince of Persia. So I'm going forth, and behold, the prince of Greece is about to come. However, I will tell you what is inscribed in the writing of truth, yet there is no one who stands firmly with me against these forces except Michael, your prince. And that's the chapter. So let me just kind of summarize what's going on here in about 2 sentences. Daniel receives a vision, a message, a word from the Lord. He understands it. It leads him to mourning and fasting for a period of 21 days. An angel finally shows up and comforts him, but he says, Look, I've been withheld by the prince of Persia for 21 days. Michael came and helped me. I got to go back and I got to handle this prince of Persia. The prince of Greece is coming. And that's the chapter. That's the chapter. I mean, there's kind of a sense to where there's not really much like it anywhere else in the Bible, although I do think there are some interesting parallels. So, yeah, there's some really fascinating things in this chapter. So just as I kind of mentioned before the recording, Daniel chapters 10 through 12 is the longest section in the entire book. And unlike the previous chapters, which are standalone stories, Daniel 10 through 12 is one long, continuous narrative. So if it feels like when we just read that it kind of is kind of ending in an anticlimactic way, that's because it's leading into chapter 11, which, by the way, is, if I'm not mistaken, one of the longest chapters, at least the longest from the sense of narrative, at least in the Hebrew portions of Daniel. So 10 through 12, you mentioned this long, continuous narrative, and also it functions as the climactic conclusion to the book of Daniel. So that's going to be really important for us to consider in the next month, where we try to wrap this book up. Okay. So the chapter begins, our current chapter, chapter 10, at the latest datable period in Daniel's life. It actually says it's in the 3rd year of Cyrus, the king of Persia. And this would roughly be around the year 587. Okay, so 537. I don't have my glasses on. That 3 looks like an 8. Okay, so 539, that's kind of when Cyrus the Persian took over, and he allowed the Jews to leave Babylonia and to go back to their homeland. So that would be the 1st year of Cyrus. So the 3rd year would be 537. So this is, again, just roughly around this particular time period. The point, though, is that we have moved beyond the Babylonian leaders, and we moved on the leaders of Media, the Medes, and now we're to the reign of the Persians. Okay, so historically, when Cyrus the Persian took control of the region of Babylonia in 539, he allowed the Jewish exiles to return to their homeland. And here's the interesting thing. It would seem, however, that Daniel has elected to stay, and he did not return with the rest of the exiles. How do we know this? Because we know that he tells us that when he received this visionary word message, that he was by the Tigris River. Okay, where is the Tigris River? Okay, so I know all of you are experts on your geography, but for the people that are watching the video, I'm going to put up the map here, kind of get an idea of what's going on. So let me get up my little pen. Okay, so this particular river right here, kind of draw it and trace it, that kind of leads down to the Persian Gulf. You could see that. So that river right there, I didn't draw it very well because I'm using a mouse. That is the Tigris. The one over here to the left of it, that's the Euphrates. Okay, you can see that that's in the region of Babylon, but in this whole gray area, of course, is the Persian Empire. But way over here is Jerusalem. Okay, so what do you need to know about the Tigris River? It is nowhere close to Jerusalem. It doesn't run through Israel or Judea or anything like that. Okay, the point is, where Daniel is right now, he's not back in his homeland. Okay, he's not in Palestine. He's just not there. Okay, not even close. Okay, so it raises this interesting question. Like, you would think that if your entire people have been enslaved and put into exile for this 70-year period, and you're longing for the time to where you can go back and you can be in the land that God promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that God promised to your descendants, the land flowing with milk and honey, the land where you had these ambitions of rebuilding the temple and restoring the Davidic kingship, and awaiting, of course, the Messiah to bring, peace on earth. Why wouldn't you return there? And that, again, that's just this question that I think we're wondering at this particular point. Like, why did Daniel not go back? Why did he stay? Okay, he had the freedom to do so. It wasn't that he was, like in jail or chained up or anything. It's not that he couldn't go back. It just, for some reason, he decided to stay. Okay, now, the narrator indicates that in the year 537, Daniel received a word or a message. It can be translated either way. And we learn two particular things about this message. And I'm careful to not call it a word from the Lord, because I think we kind of use that in a very particular way based on 1 Corinthians 14. But I mean, clearly he got something from God. It's called a message or a word. So that wouldn't be wrong, but it's something a little bit different here. We learned two particular pieces of information about this. First of all, it's called true, which is this Hebrew word emet, which typically has the connotation of something that is faithful. Obviously, if God sends a message to you, obviously that's true. But I think the sense here is not so much the truthfulness of it, but the fact that it is a message that it is bound up in faithfulness. And that's going to be really important, I think, when we actually start to look at it, because we have this entire chapter that tells us that he received it and he was bothered by it, but we actually don't get to read it until all of chapter 11 and the beginning of chapter 12. Okay. Also, we learn that it involves, quote, great conflict. Okay. So there's this great conflict that is bothering Daniel, but the message is also faithfully true. And I think those are some key things we really want to kind of keep in mind. Okay. And we also learn that Daniel understood this. Okay. It makes it very clear. He had understanding. He possessed understanding. He didn't need the interpreting angel to show up and to explain things to him, which is what we saw for the previous 3 chapters. So it's almost like we're expecting that. We're expecting Daniel to receive a vision and not understand it, and an angel has to show up, this revelatory heavenly figure, to to unveil and to explain and to reveal the contents of the dream or vision. That was in chapter 7. That was in chapter 8. That was in chapter 9. So that's not needed here, but we still see the angels show up. Okay, so they're still here to assist him in some sort of way. Now, chapter 10, verse 2 indicates that Daniel partook of a voluntary act of mourning. Okay. Now, why do people mourn? Okay. People typically will mourn if there's a death in the family. Okay. But we also know that from the Bible, people mourn as the correct, humble response to either their sin or to the sins of other people. Okay. We don't get anything in the impression that someone has died. Okay. So I don't think Daniel's mourning over the death of somebody. We certainly don't get the impression that Daniel is sinful and that he's mourning his own sin. Okay. Even though we just read an entire chapter in chapter 9 where Daniel is acknowledging the sin of the people collectively. So with no other indicator, it's best to presume that Daniel was mourning the content of his message that involved great conflict. See the logic of it? Verse 1, Daniel receives this message involving great conflict. Verse 2, Daniel goes into voluntary mourning. And I mean deep, deep mourning. Because the mourning involved a voluntary fast. No tasty food. The word for food in Hebrew, lechem, also means bread. So it's important that it's food / bread, and no meat and no wine. Okay, this is I mean, how many of you would want to take this particular fast? No bread, no meat, and no wine. Okay. Now we also learn that this 21-day fast overlapped most of the first month. And this is the part that most people, they just read over and they don't see what's actually taking place. Jewish readers would be quick to pick up what most overlook, namely that Daniel's fast overlapped the feast of Passover, because Passover is on the first month. It's actually on day 14 of the first month. Okay. So if Daniel is fasting for 21 days during the first month, it had to have overlapped Passover. Okay. And also the days of unleavened bread followed Passover. Those are days 15 through 21 at this point. Okay. So now I see that Daniel receives a vision. It moves into voluntary mourning. It moves into a voluntary fast for a long period of time, to the point that he's willing to not even partake of the bread that you would eat in the celebratory Passover festival. Okay. What in the world is in the contents of this vision that would cause him to act this way? Again, just most readers, they don't even stop to think about this. They just kind of read over and they just think, okay, well, Daniel's just a humble, pious guy. He's doing some mourning. I don't quite understand why, but you got to think like look at the response that he has. And this is raising the anticipation for the readers so they can think, okay, what is the content of this vision? It's got great conflict. It's truthful. It's faithful, but it's leading Daniel to act in these very, very pious ways. So again, this raises the question that the narrator wants the readers to ask: what is so disturbing about Daniel's message that caused such a deep mourning that was worth skipping the entire Passover time of remembrance? Okay, so if the original readers, okay, and I've been saying throughout this entire teaching in Daniel that the first original readers would have been reading this during the Maccabean revolt, even though obviously throughout time, Jews and Christians continue to read Daniel. So if the original readers living through the time of Israel's occupation of the Greek Empire and the horrific events involving the temple's destruction, or sorry, desecration, not destruction, at the hand of Antiochus IV, then they would know exactly the sort of great conflict that would move someone to mourn to the point of overlooking the Passover. So again, if I'm right about the identity of the original readers, they would be reading this and they would know exactly why someone would act this particular way. But in any case, on the 24th day, this is the 24th day of the first month, okay, an angel appears to Daniel, and this angel has an appearance that Daniel kind of struggles to define for the readers. And this is pretty typical We definitely see this throughout the book of Revelation. It's just a common trope in the book of Revelation. And it shows up a little bit in Ezekiel, when Ezekiel kind of in chapter 1, he gets this vision of heaven, and he can't quite tell you what God exactly looks like, because he can't like look at God. So he's just going, well, it's like this, it's like this, it's like this. And so, but this Daniel is visited by, I think, an angelic visitor, and he's trying to explain what this angel looks like. So this is very typical of apocalyptic descriptions, where apocalyptic deals with revealing and unveiling certain things. And so we see that this angelic revealer is illustrated with several qualifiers. He has a body that is like beryl. He has a face with the appearance of lightning, eyes like torches, feet like bronze. He has words like a tumult. Okay. So these are the best ways that he can describe this sort of, I don't know, he's in this trance-like visionary experience that he's having, and this is just the best that he can do to kind of like put them into words. It's the best that he can. Okay, obviously, this angel does not have fire torches for eyeballs. Okay, obviously, it doesn't have like bronze legs. Their feet that are like bronze. Okay, obviously, his words are not tumultuous water. It's like that's the sound of them. Okay. The interesting thing is that the book of Revelation will draw on this sort of language and reapply it in the description of Jesus, who kind of functions as this sort of revealing figure to John in the book of Revelation. So here it's actually referring to this sort of unnamed angel. Okay. So upon hearing the sound of the angel's words, Daniel fell into a deep sleep, but he was immediately awoken with the simple touch of a hand. Again, this also gets reused in the book of Revelation. And the angel informs Daniel something that is really, really interesting. And this is a detail that I think we really want to pay attention to. This is in verse 12. He says, quote, "From the day that you set your heart on understanding and humbling yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come as a response to your words." Okay. So Daniel started this at, kind of like, I guess we'll say on day one of his morning voluntary fast. Okay. It lasted for 21 days, but it only lasted for 21 days because that's how long it took for the angel to get to him. The angel's saying, look, I know it's you've been waiting a long time. I know you've been waiting for 21 days. What's that? 3 weeks? You've been waiting for 3 weeks. I know you've been waiting for this long, and you've been going through this fast, and you've actually had to, miss out on the Passover. But like, you were heard at the first moment, like, because of your humility, because you humbled yourself before your God, your words were heard at that moment. Okay. And of course he was sent. Okay. All right. So here's the question. If the angel was sent on the first day, and if Daniel was waiting for 21 days, why did it take so long for the angel to arrive? Did he get stuck in traffic? Did he, take directions from Moses in the wilderness in the book of Exodus, where they got lost? Like, why did it take so long? All right. Answer. The answer that he tells us is that he was being withstood by, quote, the prince of the kingdom of Persia, end quote. He said that's why it took so long for you to receive an answer to your petition. Okay. Like, this prince was holding me up. Okay. And again, it's not the sort of answer that we typically give to these sort of things. Like, why does it seem like our humble petitions to God are delaying? He's like, look, I was being held up by somebody. Okay. So here's the question. Actually, there's two questions. Who is the prince of Persia that blocked the angel sent to help Daniel? And what is the meaning of the noun prince that reappears throughout this chapter? And this is where I kind of want to take a small detour and want to make sure that we understand this, because I think that this is very easy to see. It's very easy to define. But for those people that don't want to accept the conclusions of this, you can see their theology going off into these wacky, crazy, left field places. Okay. But this really is not that hard. Okay. So what does prince mean in Daniel chapter 10? Okay. So Let's start here. So the Hebrew noun is the word sar. That's how you would pronounce it. Okay. We actually have a modern word that has derived from this. Okay. The word for sar, which is, I think that's what the Russian president is actually called. But actually, even that actually was derived from Caesar. Okay. So you can hear the word sar even in the word Caesar, which is actually Latin. Okay. And this word sar is pretty common in the Hebrew Bible, but it basically means a leader, like a ruler or a leader. It could mean a person of rank, so it could be like a commander of an army, but it could also refer to an angel. Okay, and I am absolutely convinced that as it is used in Daniel chapter 10, it refers to angels. Okay, as in non-human, heavenly, angelic messengers. That sort of angel. Okay, not a human messenger, but a heavenly angelic messenger. Okay, so let's look at all the references where this shows up, and you can see this. Okay, so in 10 verse 13, it says that we have the prince of the kingdom of Persia was withstanding me being the the angel that's talking to Daniel. Okay, and he was doing it for 21 days. And look, Michael, one of the chief princes, same word, came to help me. Okay, so the thing is, we know that Michael is not just an angel, he's an archangel. Okay. So a head angel. Okay. So here we know that since Michael's an angel, he's one of the chief princes. So if we know that Michael, of course, is an angel, then that would suggest that there is an angel of the kingdom of Persia. Okay. The other interesting thing here is that we see Michael is there's almost like there's hierarchy within the angels. Okay. Michael is one of the chief angels. Okay. He's not the most important one. He's one of the chief ones. And in kind of extra biblical Jewish literature, there were understandings that there were like seven kind of head angels. And we know the names of them all. Michael and Gabriel, the only two that are actually mentioned in Scripture, but there are others. But there, I think it's pretty clear that you could see if Michael is an archangel and Michael is one of the chief princes, okay, and Michael is obviously is not a human being, okay, then prince pretty clearly means angel there, and it means angel in both places. Okay, in verse 20, the angel says to Daniel, "I shall return to fight against the prince of Persia, and I'm going forth, and behold, the prince of Greece is about to come." So now we learn something else. We learn that it seems like each, I don't want to say nation, but each community, each city has its own angel that represents that particular city. And these angels can actually fight one another. Okay. But here's the point. Like if the angel that came to Daniel is presumably a good angel, and if Michael came to assist that angel, then we can presume that Michael's a good angel. If someone is resisting them, then they're not good angels. These are evil angels. Okay. This is an evil angel prince of Persia. This is an evil prince of Greece that's going to come after Persia. And we know that, of course, we know that Greece is the kingdom that comes after Persia. Okay. The next verse says, "Yet there is no one who stands firmly with me against these forces, multiple forces, except Michael, your prince." It's almost like it's Michael and whoever is speaking to Daniel. Those are the only two people that are kind of fighting these heavenly battles in the unseen realms to, you know, against these foreign nations. Okay, against these kind of foreign oppressive pagan nations. That's I think a really key and interesting point. Okay. All right. Now, later in chapter 12, we're going to see the last reference to this, where it says, "At that time, Michael, the great prince, who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise." Okay. Okay. Um, and as we saw in 10:21, Michael is your prince. Namely, Michael is the prince of you, Daniel. Namely, and I don't think it's just like Daniel's personal, guardian angel. I think Michael, it seems to be the guardian of Israel. Michael, if angels represent various nations or communities, then we have an angel of Persia, we get an angel of Greece, and Michael seems to be the angel of Israel. Okay, that seems to be the logic of it. Okay, and you can see here he's obviously Michael's the one who obviously is the one who's going to guard over the sons of your people. All right. So you can see there, like the only definition that we can fit into that makes sense of all of it is an angel. Okay, these are not human beings. Okay, Michael the archangel is not a man, a flesh and blood man. Okay, he's a human being. Okay, and they seem to be angels that represent nations, cities, communities, and while this is the key thing, while while nations are fighting on earth, when the kind of when the curtains are pulled away and the images are revealed and kind of like heaven kind of shows what's really going on, you can actually see, oh, the reason why these nations are fighting and why one might be stronger than another is because actually there are kind of representative angels that are fighting in the heavenly realm, and sometimes the forces for good can actually be thwarted and slowed down. Okay, kind of an interesting point. All right. And you see this, it's pretty fascinating. I mean, if you overlook this, you're missing out, I think, on a pretty big detail. By the way, there was another reference way earlier in the Bible, in Joshua chapter 5, um, where we have an angel that shows up and he calls himself the Prince of the host of Yahweh. Okay. So we know that the host is the host of angels. And here we have this angel belonging to the host that belongs to Yahweh. Okay, so again, that seems pretty obvious to refer to an angel at that point, and so that shows up in those two verses, Joshua 5:14-15. We don't have to look at it, but the point is that this way of describing a prince, the Hebrew noun sar, in reference to a heavenly angelic being, either good or evil, by the way, is not restricted to the book of Daniel. It was already written hundreds of years earlier in the book of Joshua. Now, the interesting thing about this is that once we understand this, then we can start to understand some other parts of the Bible. In particular, like in the book of Revelation, the princes that appear to be angels that represent various communities, we can actually start to see this for the seven churches, okay, to the angel of the church of Ephesus, okay? And this is why I made the argument there that the word means angel. It means heavenly messenger, okay, not human messenger, okay? Because we already know from the book of Daniel that there's an angel that represents Israel, there's an angel that represents Persia, there's an angel that represents Greece, okay? So it makes sense. There's an angel that's going to represent Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea, okay? That's not too difficult to see. And obviously, Revelation is the main apocalyptic book, and Daniel is the first apocalyptic book. Okay. So to me, I think that's a pretty solid case. I think it's hard to kind of say, well, these princes aren't angels, meaning like heavenly angelic beings. Okay. But also what we're seeing here is that you have good and evil angels. Okay. You have good angels and you have fallen angels. And again, it's a pretty easy place to see that. Okay, so that's kind of how the story goes. Is that Daniel receives this vision. It's truthful, and it involves great conflict. It moves him to voluntary mourning and fasting, and he does it for 21 days until finally the angel arrives to kind of help him out. And he's like, hey, I'm sorry. I was held up in traffic. There was another angel that was fighting against me. And then in chapter 11, the angel is going to, of course, tell us, the readers, the people that are able to kind of look upon the scene of angel talk, the angel talking to Daniel, what actually this vision is about. And it's very long, it's very detailed, and it's going to cover like hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay. So this is just kind of like introducing us to that. Okay. So, again, we should expect chapter 11 to involve great conflict, but also we should expect that it's going to involve the faithful trustworthiness of God, who, even though we might not actually see what's going on, God is still kind of, in control and in charge, and always looking out and trying to find ways to vindicate his people. Okay, so how would the initial readers have understood Daniel chapter 10? I think this raises one of these questions of theodicy, like, why are there bad things happening in the world? Why do bad things happen to good people? And, here's the interesting thing. The Bible doesn't just give one answer to this, okay? Sometimes the answer is that why do bad things happen to people? and it's because, well, you're sinning and God is punishing you. Okay, that's actually a pretty common answer in the Bible. Why do bad things happen to good people? Well, it could just be that the forces of evil are attacking you. You're being tempted by the devil, or you're being just evildoers are out to get you. Okay, that's possible. Okay, but here's an interesting question. Based on this chapter, why are the people of God being persecuted by pagan nations? Well, the author of Daniel chapter 10 would say that there are battles going on in the heavenly realms that we can't see. And there are good angels who fight on behalf of Israel, but there are also evil angels representing pagan nations and cities who, by the way, they can actually overpower the good angels. Okay. And the battles in heaven affect the outcome of the battles that are currently taking place on earth. That's the key thing, is that there's some sort of relationship between the conflicts that are taking place between earthly nations. And from the perspective of Israel, they're concerned is that the people of God and pagan nations. Why are they battling? Why are they fighting? Why does it look like Israel is losing? Why does it look like Israel is being defeated by these pagan nations? What's going on there? Okay. Notice that the answer is not they've God's abandoned them or God has forsaken them or anything like that. It's that you might not be able to see it, but if someone can pull the curtain away and open up the heavens and just reveal to you what's going on, which is why Daniel and Revelation are apocalyptic books, you could see that there are battles going on in heaven with angels that represent the nations that are on earth that are actually fighting. Okay. So here's an interesting passage out of Second Maccabees. Remember, First and Second Maccabees are the earliest historical records to the conflict that the earliest readers of the book of Daniel were going through, and also First and Second Maccabees are dependent upon the book of Daniel for their own portrayals. Okay, they've actually read Daniel, they're influenced by it, and they're going to quote and copy some of its words. So here's this interesting line here, which you could take this for whatever you think it means. Okay. So it says, about this time, Antiochus made his second invasion of Egypt. Okay. Now to keep in mind what's going on. Remember, Antiochus is the Greek king that's up kind of in the north. And he has, in order to invade Egypt, which is south of Israel, he has to go through Israel. Okay. So in order to do that, he's got to travel all the way through and go south all the way to Egypt. Okay. And it happened that for almost 40 days, there appeared, notice this thing, there appeared over the city golden clad cavalry charging through the air in companies fully armed with lances and drawn swords, troops of cavalry drawn up, attacks and counterattacks made on this side and on that, brandishing of shields, passing of spears, hurling of arrows, the flash of golden trappings, and armor of all kinds. Okay, that's what kind of appeared in the air. Okay, therefore, everyone prayed that the apparition might prove to have been a good omen. You see what's going on there? We have the Greek kingdom going down to invade Egypt, and people see this vision, not on earth, but they see this vision in the sky of armies fighting in the heavens, because that explains what's going on between the Greek kingdom and the Egyptian kingdom. I mean, that's what's going on there. Okay, so I mean, you see, like they're clearly being influenced by that, and of course they're trying to figure out, okay, what does this mean? Like, how do we interpret this? They just hope and they pray that this is good news. That's good. What's going on there? Okay. So, and you might be thinking that there are several other passages in the Bible that, to some degree or another, show influence of this particular belief. Okay. And I think an interesting question is, to what degree has this been, I would say, shifted or diminished in light of the resurrection and the exaltation of Jesus? That particular victory that has actually taken place. So I think that's an open question that's there. But we still have passages like, Ephesians 6 that say, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the powers and the principalities that are in the heavenly places. Okay. Okay. So final slide, modern applications. I got three of them, three applications. It's actually really, really hard to pull applications out of this particular chapter. So, all right. So, number one, okay. The narrator spends a great deal of time stressing how Daniel's humility, as expressed by his mourning and fasting, resulted in an immediate response from God. Okay. The faithfulness that God demonstrated towards Daniel invites us to seek him with similar acts of genuine humility. My point is that when I look at Daniel, I see, okay, this is someone who is, it's explained to him that, look, you demonstrated all these pious acts. It took a long time for a response. Okay. That's not because God is not listening or that God has abandoned you. In fact, from the very moment that you start to do it, he heard you and he responded and he sent an angel to help you. However, the angel was held up. But the point there is that Daniel did something good. Okay. He was humble, he was pious, and that he received a faithful response that I think involves, or at least for us, it should bring about an appreciation for the faithfulness of God. Okay. We should respond with similar acts of humility because God has proven that he is faithful when people act that way towards him. Number two, although God sent forth an angel to comfort Daniel, an evil angel held up the rescue mission. Nevertheless, Daniel did not give up, but instead he chose to wait patiently upon God for 21 days. And there are many times in our lives when our noble prayers might not be answered as quickly as we had hoped for. But Daniel's story should inspire and encourage us to exhibit patience and long suffering. Okay, if we have good motives and we're praying or fasting or whatever we're doing in order to receive a response from God, and it doesn't come about as quickly as we would like, Daniel didn't just give up. He didn't say, well, God didn't respond after the first day, I'm going to quit and I'm just going to get mad and angry at God. No, he chose to be patient. He chose to certainly long suffer, fasting for that long time period. And the thing is, we don't even know. We don't even know sometimes why there is a delayed answer. We don't know. Okay. And I'm not trying to suggest here that every time that God delays, it's because an angel is interfering. I don't think that's always the case. I don't think that's the biblical answer to why that always is. Sometimes the answer is just no. Okay. 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 So I think we got to respond, of course, with patience and long suffering when these sort of things happen, because we just don't know sometimes. Okay. But at least we have at least one biblical answer that is actually given. Okay. And lastly, I'm moving to a passage in Revelation here. In Revelation 12, 7 through 8, it actually details how Michael and his good angels defeated the dragon and his evil angels. Okay. Now, knowing that angelic warfare is an integral part of the battle between good and evil, let us not forget that we too can conquer the dragon, quote, because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony. That's the gospel, the testimony. And they did not love their life even when faced with death. That's basically what Revelation 12, verse 11 says. Okay. So notice there that it actually indicates that there's this relationship between the conflict between good and evil. Okay. And actually, in that particular conflict, Michael and his angels were able to defeat the devil and his angels without the help of Jesus, without the help of God. They were able to do that. Okay. And the devil gets thrown down to the earth. And then the sense is that we too can actually participate in that battle, in that sense of conquering. But notice we're not doing it with guns or with swords or with physical weapons. We're doing it because the death of Jesus and the blood of the Lamb has defined us in a particular way. Because of the word of their testimony, which is the gospel message of their testimony, you defeat with the speaking of the message, and also there's the sense at the end there of a faithfulness that is willing to endure even in the midst of conflict, even in the midst of it says even when they're faced with death. Okay, they did not love their life even when faced with death. They're willing to be martyred for doing what is right. They're willing to be faithful even to that particular point. And I think that's just the key point that I think, and we're thinking about how we can apply this to our lives. And clearly, Revelation 12 is dependent upon Daniel chapter 10 with that sort of vision. So I don't want you to think that, well, we've got conflicts in our world, and yeah, there's angels that are going on in the heavenly realm. We might not be able to see them, we might not be able to understand, but since I don't know what's going on up there, I don't know how that relates to me. No, I don't think that's true. I think that we have a response. We can actually conquer the dragon by identifying with the blood of Jesus, by continuing to testify about the gospel, about Jesus' gospel, and by refusing to love our own life even when faced with death, being faithful to the point of death. If that means being obedient to the point of being martyred, then so be it. Okay, that's how we conquer the devil and the dragon. Okay, so that is what I have for today. Appreciate you all watching. I'm going to go ahead and cut the video right now. Hopefully it's been enlightening and encouraging, and hopefully you found some good practical application there in the final slide. We'd love to have you join us for our Biblical Unitarian Fellowship. Check us out in the description below for all the links and the contact information and the website. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.